Let us look live here at Manhattan. This is obviously on high, the motorcade assembled and waiting outside Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue to take Donald Trump to court as we look to his hush money trial now. The first of his 4 criminal indictments will now be the first to be tried in a court. It's set to start today with jury selection, a history-making moment, and a legal proceeding that's never happened before. No former president has ever gone on trial for criminal charges. The prosecution case rests on an untested and what some critics call creative interpretation of New York law. And today's jury selection process itself has unique aspects too, all of which we're going to talk about now with Joseph Moreno, former federal prosecutor. He's in Alexandria, Virginia, back with us this morning. It's always great to welcome you to the program, particularly today. Good morning.
Morning, Heather. Good to be with you.
Why don't we start with your perspective, first of all, on the historic nature of today, Joe, today and this trial?
Well, Heather, I'd say as a lawyer, it's fascinating. As an American, it's sort of horrifying. I feel like we're a bit of a national spectacle here in the fact that, as you point out, this is the first time a president has been charged and now placed on trial. In what I like your point about it's definitely creative by District Attorney Alvin Bragg, but it's serious. 34 felonies could put Donald Trump in jail for a serious amount of time if he's found guilty.
I'll come back to that prosecution strategy with you in just a second, but I do want to begin with a couple of questions about the first task, to impanel a jury. Again, as we look live at the shots of the vehicles getting set to take the former president to court. When the defendant, Joseph, is Donald Trump, how difficult will it be to select a jury that is neutral?
I think difficult is an understatement. I mean, this is typically a process that takes maybe half a day or maybe a full day, or even a serious trial. For a high-profile one, maybe a few days. But for Donald Trump, I think 2 weeks is probably what we're looking at. I mean, these jurors out of a jury pool have already been vetted by questionnaire, that they say that they are neutral and they have not made a preconceived notion about whether Donald Trump is guilty or not guilty. But the fact is now the lawyers on both sides, both the prosecutors and the defense, will really put these potential jurors through the paces. They will ask them in detail about whether or not they understand or have a preconceived notion about what Donald Trump is charged with. They will test their political leanings. They will try to weed out jurors that are there for the wrong reasons, like ones that'll write a book afterward or appear on television for interviews. So they want people that are taking the process seriously and are not there for their own sort of self-aggrandizement, and that they will listen to the evidence and the facts and make a fair decision at the end.
If you were prosecuting this case in particular, what jurors would you want, or what type of juror would you either select or would you strike in order, as the prosecution, to increase your chances of securing a conviction here?
Well, I would certainly strike those that appear to either have a sort of before the fact notion, if they kind of signal one way or the other about whether or not they feel the defendant is guilty. On the positive side, I would look for people that seem like they'd be capable of understanding this. It's not the most simple of cases. It requires sort of a few jumps in the law about how to get to where Alvin Bragg ultimately wants to be. But I think ultimately you want fairness. You want people that are going to go in there with an open mind, who will pay attention, who will not be sort of enamored by the fact that Donald Trump is basically a celebrity, and they'll be fair in terms of their ultimate verdict.
In terms of the prosecutor's strategy, again, you just mentioned it there, and we talked about it earlier. State, this creative approach for Alvin Bragg and the team. What are the challenges for prosecutors here?
Well, I mean, this is effectively a campaign finance violation case. This is, we keep referring to it as a hush money case, but I think people are in a misconception. Hush payments are legal. They might be sleazy, but it's okay to make a hush money payment to keep something quiet that might be embarrassing. The problem here for Donald Trump is that the theory is he made these hush payments to 3 different people, not just Stormy Daniels, which is legal. He made it out of his own pocket, which is legal, but then he did not declare it. And the theory is that because this was done in the weeks leading up to the 2016 election, And because it was done in the hopes of trying to help Donald Trump get elected by stifling negative publicity, that it should have been declared. It was too large. And the fact that it was funneled through Michael Cohen as sort of a pretend lawyer's fee when in fact it was a hush money payment. That's the theory, that basically Donald Trump cheated the system and he hid this payment, which should have been declared. And presumably, if it was declared, it may have impacted the election itself.
So the counter to that, what are you expecting to see and hear play out from Trump's legal team? What will their strategy be, do you think?
They're going to say this is old news, that this is behavior that happened going on 8 years ago. They're going to say, if this was so serious, why didn't prosecutors bring this in a timely fashion? Why did federal prosecutors look at this and pass on it? And again, campaign finance, that's a federal law. And that's the jump that Alvin Bragg is making. He's trying to tie state business records violations, which are a misdemeanor, with federal campaign finance laws. That might not hold up legally on appeal. I think also the fact that the prosecution's star witness is Michael Cohen, and he's a convicted perjurer, I don't know how the jury's really going to take that. And so the fact that the case largely hinges on Cohen's testimony, that could be really difficult for the prosecution to overcome.
We'll be watching this play out over the weeks to come for sure, and I suspect we'll have other conversations in that time. But thank you so much for setting things up this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Heather.
Joseph Moreno is a former federal prosecutor. He was in Alexandria, Virginia.